Pattern making in Leathercraft allows you to take the designs in your mind and put them on paper or in a design program. In this course, I'll be teaching you the benefits of pattern making, the stages of pattern making. I'll teach you how to design patterns on paper and card, and I'll also teach you how to design patterns in a design program. Without further ado, let's begin this course. The first thing you need to know is you don't need to be an artistic person to design patterns. As someone who is not good at sketching or drawing, you can be reassured if you are similar. Remember, we're making shapes, not painting or carving stone. As long as you know how to use a pen, ruler and read measurements, and also aim that your product has symmetry, is proportionate and contains beauty, you'll be able to design patterns. The benefits of pattern making is it allows you to design patterns on your own. It also teaches you about the different types of construction, especially if you are designing a three-dimensional object such as a bag. You'll be able to make more custom items if a customer requests it. I would split the stages of pattern making into 12 stages. If you're making a custom item for a customer, you probably won't have the luxury of doing a prototype and a redesign of the item. This is why if you can design patterns, it opens up doors for you in Leathercraft. Start small in your designs, and as you gain experience, you can work your way up to designing more advanced projects. Now I'll show you how to design patterns on paper and card. I'm going to show you two ways to design patterns on paper or card. You can use either of these methods. The first way is using graph paper. This is good for designing smaller projects such as wallets, watch straps, key rings, pen cases and more. The straight lines on the graph paper are a benefit to make sure your lines are straight. There are different sizes of graph paper. These ones here are 2mm squares. The smaller the graph paper, the better for more intricate measurements. If you are designing a wallet, you can use a card of your own to see how the card will fit into the pockets. What I've done is I've made a little card template using the measurements of a card. For doing curves, you can use some French curves. The pen to use is preferably one with a smaller point. I use a 0.7mm. If you don't have access to a smaller point pen, you'll just have to make sure your lines are in line with the graph paper. In any case, the graph paper will provide accurate stitch lines. You can also change the color of the pen for the trim allowance and also for the stitch lines. Once you have designed your project, what I recommend is cutting out the pattern about 1 centimeter from the edges, gluing it onto some card, and then using your utility knife to cut out the pattern. Once you have designed your project, what I would recommend is cutting the pattern out about 1 centimeter from the edges, gluing it onto some card, and then cutting the pattern out. You can design wallets, watch straps, key rings, and other small leather goods just on paper. What we're going to do is design a minimalist wallet on graph paper. I'm going to design this exact same pattern with the other method and also in the design program. It's up to you what pattern design method you want to use. Our first measurement is going to be 79. And because these are 2mm square boxes, the 79 is going to be in between two of the lines. Our top measurement is going to be 101. And again, 101 means it will start in between two of the lines. And what you can do as a bit of a tip, you can just simply place a dot in the middle and then place a dot where it's going to go in the middle. So placing a dot in the middle, placing the ruler just next to those dots, and then doing a line. And this will just help you get an accurate line in the middle. Placing a dot, using that dot at the top, and then going down. The next line we're going to do is going to be our edge of our wallet. So these 3 lines here are going to be our trim allowance lines. We're not going to have any trim allowance on the top of the wallet. So what we'll have to do is just move the edge 4mm in. So what we'll do, we'll count from 4mm from this line here, and we just have to skip 2 of the lines, 2, 4. We're back in the middle here, so just place a dot, and with the second dot Because we're not going to go completely to the edge, there's going to be another 4mm trim allowance line here. So we can just place a dot where the line will stop. Line up the ruler next to those dots. And this one's a lot easier because it's already on a line here, so we just go 2 across. Same here, on this line here, 2 across. I'll place that dot there. And you don't really need to place the dots on these straight lines, but you can if you want. That's just telling us where the line will stop. And again, this one's easy because it's just on a straight line. So as you can see, we have our trim allowance here, and we have our edge of our wallet. And again, we're not going to have any trim allowance at the top of the pattern. The next line we're going to do is going to be a stitch line. And the stitch line is going to be 3mm, in my case, 3mm from the edge of the wallet. If yours is going to be 4mm, you can do 4mm, but for me, I like a 3mm stitch line from the edge. I'm going to move 3mm from this line. And because this is in the middle, 3 will bring us back onto the straight line. And down here, 3mm will bring us to the middle between 2 of the squares. Placing a dot in between 2 of the squares, and then going on the straight line to that dot there. Rotate over, and this line here is on a line, so we'll end up in between 2 of the lines. And the same on this line here, going up this way, we'll end up here in between 2 boxes. Place the dot right there in the middle of the square, and then simply get the pen and go to that dot. As you can see, we have our trim allowance, we have our edge of our wallet, and we have our stitch line. And again, we're not going to have a stitch line at the top, so we'll just leave the top how it is. The dots are completely optional. They're mainly just for if you're a beginner and you're new to this. As you advance and get much more better, you simply can just do the straight lines and that's it. What we're going to do next is we're going to do the front pocket measurement. And the front pocket measurement is going to be 79 by 80. And we're going to make sure that the front pocket is in line with this line here. The bottom measurement is 79. So again, you have to go in the middle of a square, and then the top line is going to be 80. And 80 is much more easier because it's just to a line. And what we're going to do is simply just do the exact same thing that you did in this one here. So 4mm from the edge on these 3 sides, and then 3mm from that edge again. And as you can see, we have now got our little patterns. The next thing we're going to do is we're simply going to just remove this from the graph paper. The next thing I'm going to do is simply just wash my hands because I have ink over them, and then I'll show you the next step. The next thing we're going to do is get our pricking irons, and we're going to be testing to see if they make it into the corner here, and then from here across to this corner, and then from here back up to the top. And this is where your pattern measurement may slightly differ compared to mine. I'm using a 2.82mm pricking iron, and you might be using the exact same pricking iron, or you may not be. And that's completely fine, because what we'll be learning in this part here is where the pricking iron ends up in the corner, and then you can adjust your pattern measurement on the both length and width, and then you can make a pattern for your specific pricking iron. What we're going to be doing now is we're going to be placing the pricking iron up the top here. Me personally, I prefer a crease line, so I'll be using a crease line here. And I don't want the pricking iron to be on the crease line. So I'll be moving this pricking iron tooth 3mm from this edge up the top here. Whether you use a creaser or not, that's completely up to you. But it's still a good idea to be about 3mm from the edge, 3 or 4mm, completely up to you. And because this line here is in the middle of the squares, it's not on one of these lines, we're going to just count 3mm from here there. So 1, 2, 3. So our pricking iron should be exactly on this line here, and we're aiming for the tooth to be in the middle. So when we look at the tooth from a bird's eye view, we want that tooth to be in the middle on that line. And then get your mallet and then go through the paper. And it's a good idea to wear some ear protection. And as you can see, when we line up that pricking iron, it goes into the corner. And then across. Place that pricking iron tooth in the corner. And obviously I wouldn't do that on my normal leather projects. I wouldn't go pricking iron in the corner here and then in the corner here again. But we're just doing this just for on the pattern, because I just want to see where the teeth are on this pricking iron here as it's going into the corner, and then the pricking iron tooth here as it's going into the corner on this line here. And then with this tooth here, we want to make sure it's on this line here, 3mm from this line here. What we've done is we've got our pricking iron or our stitch and chisel and gone from here to here, across here, and then back up to here. Now, depending on the pricking iron that or stitch and chisel that you're using, your pricking iron tooth may or may not have gone into this corner. If it's gone in between this line here, so that you have a tooth here and then one here, you can either choose to go to the next one or this one there. I would probably prefer to go to the longer one here as opposed to the shorter one, but again, it's completely up to you which one you want to do. Then what you would do is simply get the measurement from here to the pricking iron tooth, and then add 3mm from that, because that's going to be your new stitch line. Add 3mm from that, that will be your edge of your wallet, and then add another 4mm for the trim allowance, and then that will be your new length of the wallet. Same thing on this side here. If your pricking iron has gone past this line or it's before the line, you can either choose which one you want to go with, and then get the measurement from here to the new pricking iron measurement, and then add 3mm on, and then add another 4mm on for that. And then what you can do is simply get that measurement and then make a brand new pattern, and then you can have a minimalist wallet pattern that is suited to your pricking irons. The next thing we want to do is we're going to look at the front pocket here. What we do want to look at though is where this line goes. And what we're aiming for is the top of this front pocket to go in between two of the stitch holes, because we don't want this line here to be colliding with any of these stitch holes, because we don't want any of the stitch holes to be going through the top of this line here, because as we stitch, we want the stitches to go over the top of this line, instead of a pricking iron going through it. This is why it's important to have this line here line up with this, because then we can just see a side by side to see whether this line here will be in between two of the stitch holes. And then what you can do is look at where your stitch holes are on your pricking iron or stitch and chisel, and then just see whether this line here is in between two of the stitch holes. If it isn't, you can either move the pattern up or move it down. I personally would prefer to move the pattern down as opposed to move it up. But again, that is personal preference. You can choose which one you want to do. And you don't need to worry about marking any of these stitch holes here, because we can see how it is, and because these are already lined up how they are, we can sort of get an idea of where the pricking irons are going to go anyway. This is why it's important to have these line up together, so then we can just see where this front pocket will end up in between a pricking iron or not. What we're going to do now is we can simply get our graph paper and just make the brand new pattern that we have. What you can do if you're using the exact same pricking irons as me, you can simply just cut out your patterns and then glue them onto some card. But me personally, I don't really like how there's all the pricking iron marks. However, you won't see the pricking iron marks anyway, because there'll be card behind it. So what I'll do, I'll just make a brand new pattern of these measurements. You can do the exact same with your brand new measurements that you have. What I'm going to do now is get these pattern measurements and put them onto this card here. I'll cut these patterns out. And that is the first way to make patterns. And what you can do is you can use this card to see where the card will end up. So you could use one of your own cards. It's a good idea to see how the card will fit in the wallet. The second option we're going to be doing is using some card. And the reason why these are curved is because this card has been rolled up. And I'm going to show you how we're going to design the minimalist wallet pattern using this method. And the benefits of this pattern making method, it can be done on both smaller projects and larger projects, whereas the graph paper is very limited in the pretty much the smaller project section. Another benefit as well is that these patterns that we're making, the card doesn't have to be square. As you can see, the corners are not square, but when we trim this pattern up, it will be square. What I'm going to do, simply just get your ruler and just place it roughly in the middle. And I'll be using the cutting mat lines here. And just do a score mark. Fold the pattern over. And we can just remove some of that excess. I'm going to find roughly where the middle is using this line here. And then when you roughly found it, simply go through, open the pattern out, and we're simply going to do a score mark from that line to this line. And I'll just open that up. And what you can do is just get your blade and just place it in that line, and you can just line up your ruler with your blade. Double check your ruler is lined up, and then we're going to do a score mark. Fold over, and then we're going to fold back out. And as you can see, the cut marks are on this side here. I'm going to fold this way. And what we're going to do is we're going to do the width of the main piece. And that is going to be 79. And half that is 39.5. And this is the fold piece here. And what we're going to do is just place this ruler up against it. And then we'll just place this ruler here. up against the ruler. And this will just make sure that the ruler is completely straight against the edge. Or simply just go by eye and just make sure that the ruler is flush with the edge. But this is a nice way to use this ruler, place it up against the edge, and then you can use this ruler here to place it up against this ruler. And you can either keep it there or just remove it, it's up to you. 39.5. And then switch this around. What we're going to do now is you can either just open this back up and then cut from this line to this line and then do the opposite, or you can cut from this line to this line, fold it over and then place a ruler and then cut this line to this line. What I prefer to do is just leave it folded. Just place your blade there, line up the ruler against the edge of the blade, and once you're sure it's lined up, double check and then go through. And you can just do some score marks to begin with, because you don't want to cut all the way through and then be on an angle like that. Fold out, and then we're going to fold it this way. The length of the wallet is 101, half of that is 50.5. Then line up your blade. And then score mark, and then work your way through. And that is the first pattern. To reinforce it, what we can do, just get some masking tape. And we're going to do the exact same technique for the pocket. And the width of the wallet is again 79. Half of that is 39.5. Fold it over this way, and the length is going to be 80, and half of 80 is 40. And that is our front pocket completed. and then just remove that excess of masking tape. This is the second way of making patterns, much more efficient, can be used on larger projects as well as smaller projects. It's a very effective way to make patterns. I'm going to show you another thing that you can do with these types of patterns. I've made another little pocket piece, and what you can do is making sure the fold is on this side here, get a French curve. What you can do is you can make a little decorative pocket. Just get your utility knife, and when you open it up, you can have a nice curve pocket. So this is a great way of making little symmetrical pockets if you like. And get some masking tape. And then what you can do is just remove that excess. And then simply get your utility knife and then remove this piece here. And there is a nice little pocket piece. And French curves come in a range of different sizes. And there you can have a nice little pocket piece for your wallet. If you do want to do the 4mm line and then the 3mm line, you can simply just get a ruler and use another ruler as well, and then go 4mm, make the line, and then another 3mm to make the stitch line. This one here is the second method. I'm going to show you how to do a corner radius before moving on to the design program. For a corner radius, you need to make sure you have a square corner. And for smaller corner radiuses, you could simply just use a coin, place a coin in the corner and then cut around it. However, we're going to be doing a larger corner radius, and I'll show you how that's done. And for this one here, we're going to be doing a 40mm corner radius. And what we're going to do is just get our ruler and place it along the edge here. Then I'm going to get the other ruler here, and where it says 40, just line it up next to it. I'll get the pen, and what I'm going to do is simply place the pen on the 40 and just move the ruler up to it. And then what I'm going to do is simply just go down to the 40 here and mark a line. Same thing on the opposite side. Mark a dot. Simply place the ruler next to that dot, and then go down to that 40 and mark a line. Yep, just making sure it's in line. What we're then going to do is get a compass, and we're going to place the compass in the middle where those lines intersect. Place the compass at the top, and then simply move the compass over to the other side. And then what you can do is get a utility knife and just cut around the curve. And that is how you do a corner radius. As you can see, there are a couple ways to design patterns on paper and card. In part 2, I'm going to teach you how to design this pattern in a design program.